sword. Thought it was applicable given the fact that today's video is going to be about a sword. Okay. Scooch back into frame better. So this is going to be my review of the Black Clover movie, Sword of the Wizard King. The first movie that Black Clover has done. We'll see if we end up getting any more, but depending on what happens with the actual rest of the manga and the anime, we'll see how that ends up turning out. I figured that this was one of the ones that I can do during the One Piece hiatus, and hopefully it should land, that it should go up when it's still on hiatus, so we'll see how that goes. So, I'll probably use the sword later in the video, but for now I can go on the way. So, I don't have my Black Bull shirt here, so I had to go with my Noelle shirt, which is perfectly fine, because Noelle is my favorite character from Black Clover, and she gets some good moments in this movie, as does Asta, as does Yuno, as does several of the other characters, a good chunk of the other characters. So, in regards to context for the movie, I think the movie is supposed to be considered canon events within the story, but even if it's not, if it is, fine. If it's not, okay. The events of the movie take place between the end of the Elf Resurrection arc and the beginning of the Heart Kingdom Joint Struggle arc. So, from what I can tell, and based on the character designs that we see, mostly for Noelle and Asta, it takes place after they've done a ton of their training within the Heart Kingdom with Lillipechka and with the other characters there. And that, based on the character designs of some of the other characters as well, that is very much implied. That is what is, that's the time frame that it's taking place in. Which makes perfect sense in my opinion. It's like you just had the characters go through this big training arc and everything like that. The kingdom seems to have recovered a bit from the Elf Resurrection war that happened and everything against the elves and then against the demon, devil, whatever you want to call it. And the movie itself makes references to that as like events because of that, or why certain things are happening in the movie in the first place. Generally the brief description of it is that during this big celebration of like this big sports festival tournament type thing that happens every 10 years, it gets interrupted by Conrad Leto, who is the 27th Wizard King, so the Wizard King just before Julius, and who was sealed away by Julius because of crimes he committed against the Clover Kingdom. And Conrad was sealed away along with a sword that was invented by, it's called the Imperial Sword, that was invented by Lumiere, who was the first Wizard King. Elsgosia, I don't know, I'm just going to call it the Imperial Sword because the name is hard to pronounce. The sword looks cool, but the name is hard to pronounce. And Conrad has used his powers of, the powers that he has from his own grimoire combined with the powers of the sword, and has revived 3 past Wizard Kings. Princia Funny Bunny. She is an exceedingly serious woman, so the funny part is funny. Jester Granandos, and then Edward Avalanche. These ones, I'm already planning on doing a separate video where I go over Conrad, Princia, Jester, and Edward, where I go over them and go over their powers much more in detail and more of their past that we get about them in detail. I plan on doing a separate video about that. Probably not one each, but maybe like 2 in one video, 2 in another video, or all 4 in one video. I haven't made that decision yet. But they all have really good character designs and everything, so they're all fairly unique in regards to the way that they look. I mean, like, it's like, with anime, there's only so far you can go before, like, oh, this character kind of has, like, scars or has, like, hairstyle or a haircut or, hair color or clothing choices that are similar to to other characters, either within the same anime or within other anime. So that's just kind of one of the things that happens. And the 4 former Wizard Kings, being led by Conrad, with Conrad as a leader, their plan is to then take magical power from all the different citizens of the Clover Kingdom and then use that power in order to try to destroy the Clover Kingdom by imbuing it in the sword. And of course, this leads to, of course, Asta and the rest of the magical knights having to then fight against them and try to stop them. And that's the basic summary of the movie. But there is also much more of a summary that I will be getting into in a moment, where I actually talk about more aspects of the plot of the movie in detail. But before I did that, I did want to go over some of the other little bit of facts for information that are in the movie. So as I said, there is the Imperial Sword. That is this magical sword that was created by Lumiere, Silvermillion Clover, who is, of course, the first Wizard King, the one who we learned so much about through the elf regeneration story arc and everything like that, whose, statue / petrified body was there for a good chunk of the beginning of the series, and everything, that he invented this sword and that has been passed down throughout the Wizard Kings, and that each one of them has imbued it with pieces of their soul, pieces of their power. And of course, the first thing that popped into my mind was, oh God, it's a Horcrux. Because Harry Potter brain. I was like, oh God, it's a Horcrux. I'm not far off, by the way. And it might be taken from a similar concept of someone imbuing parts of their soul into an object. I mean, a lot of anime have a similar concept as well. I mean, like with One Piece, you have Big Mom who does that with her soul fruit, imbuing objects and stuff like that with her power to make them stronger and make them sentient. I don't know if the sword is 100% considered sentient, but it definitely seems to have at least a little bit of a mind of its own based on something that we see at the end of the movie. But that's spoiler, so I'm not going to go into that. And then, of course, for the 4 new characters that we are introduced to, as I said, we have Conrad Leto, who is the 27th Wizard King, and he was the Wizard King before Julius. So Julius is the 28th Wizard King, which I'm pretty sure is something that they've already stated within the series itself. But now we kind of know who was the Wizard King before Julius. Conrad had been a magic knight. He'd been in charge. He is a former captain of the White Serpent Squad, as it is referred to as. And he was very popular, and he was made Wizard King. We get some of the backstory for these guys a little bit here and there throughout the movie. Some of the stuff comes from Nero, because, of course, she's been alive as a bird for, 500 some years since everything happened with the first Wizard King. And so she's kind of seen the rise and fall of a lot of these different, Wizard Kings and everything like that over the years. And now, now she has her human forms, and now she can communicate better. And Conrad is like the leader of these guys. I'll get more into him in a moment when we get into the more detail of the beginning of the movie. Then we have Princia Funny Bunny. As I said, very serious woman, not exactly much on the side of levity. She was the 11th Wizard King, and we don't get too much about her past within the context of the movie. We just kind of get like a little bit of like, she was always so strong that she just never really found anyone that could stand up against her. Her power is called Legion Magic, and she can it kind of reminds me of chess. She can summon and manipulate and control these what look like giant versions of like chess pieces to a degree, and she can use them to, surround people, attack people, trap people, different things like that. And that's the main way she fights for most of the movie. And then later on in the movie, we get a little bit more of like how she would fight, like hand-to-hand combat type stuff. But again, that goes into more plot of the movie. But we get some interesting stuff with her in that regard. I like her powers. And then we have Jester Granados, and he was the 16th Wizard King. And he has the power of barrier magic. And he also seems to be quite interested in like science type of stuff, or like research and things like that. It seems to be something that he's rather interested in. I don't know. Again, we don't get a whole lot of stuff about his backstory within the movie itself. But again, it's probably similar to what the other Wizard Kings have all come up against, where they had various problems where, there were very few people who could actually stand up to them in regards to power. Because like Princia's, Legion magic can just make her help her create a ton of different soldiers, as many soldiers as needed. As we see throughout the course of the movie, she creates thousands of these things, possibly millions, in regards to what we see her do. Jester is able to create lots of different types of barriers and form barriers into different shapes and then use those as ways to attack. So that's the way that he's designed. He also kind of more has the like maniacal laughter of a villain set up in his regard. And then we have Edward Avalanche. And he was the 20th Wizard King. He has ice wedge magic. So he has magic that allows him to create and manipulate and control and, just do ice on huge scales or small scales, depending on what he's trying to do. And such. And again, he is exceedingly powerful. All four of these guys, they're former Wizard Kings, for crying out loud. They are all exceedingly powerful. Edward seems to be the oldest out of all of them, and he seems to be the oldest that we've seen for anyone that's held the title of Wizard King, because he definitely looks older than Conrad and Princia and Jester, and he looks older than Julius should be. Julius is in his child form for the majority of this movie, beyond like some flashbacks that we get, because this is taking place after the Elf Resurrection arc, so this is when Julius is still, child Julius, at that point in time. So, Edward has ice magic and everything, so he has ice wedge and everything, so he's got pretty good powers. I mean, like, they all have really good powers in this regard. And they're all ones that clearly have, during the time frame that they were the Wizard King, they have been able to cultivate and grow their power quite a lot. I mean, we saw some of the feats that Julius was capable of throughout the course of the Elf Resurrection arc, and then even later on. We were, able to see some of the things he was capable of. This is like, these are four other previous Wizard Kings that have had, that by the time they became Wizard Kings and were probably Wizard Kings for a certain amount of time, for a decent amount of time, they were able to, train their magic even more. So we get to see that. So going actually into the plot of the movie, the first part that we get in the movie is actually like a bunch of these different rings that look like they have all of these different Roman numerals on them, all floating around something, and then they all shatter. This is a reference to Julius's time magic, that he can, lock people within like chronostasis. And we get this flashback that is 10 years ago. So not quite 10 years before the series would have started, but probably a little bit like 8.5, 9 years or so before the series would have started. And what we see is the Wizard King at the time, the disgraced Wizard King at the time, Conrad Leto, has been was stopped from destroying the Clover Kingdom with the Imperial Sword by Julius, along with a bunch of other very prominent knights. We see Nozel, we see Yami, we see the guy who would end up becoming the captain of the Black Orcas, or the Purple Orcas, but he was not the captain of the Purple Orcas at the time. So, or at the time when the series started, so I don't know exactly what happened with that. We see, as I said, we saw Nozel, we see Forgolion, we see a bunch of other ones. I don't think we see Dorothy, and I don't think we see Charlotte, because I don't think they're captains yet. But we see like a bunch of other ones that we know would end up being prominent members of the Royal Knights later on. Soon to be captains and stuff like that. That are all part of this fight against Conrad in regards to stopping him from destroying the kingdom. And he is able to, they have him captured, and then he activates his power, which his power is called key magic. And it allows him to create keys that he can use to open and close doors. And then in doing so, he can then use those powers in order to be able to take magic from people, or just like straight up steal it / copy it from people. And one of the things we see him do is he activates the keys and he opens up all of these different doors that then each have different power come out of them. And he then uses that to kind of, to a degree, wipe the floor with, the rest of the different magic knights that are part of this. And he ends up being stopped by Julius. Julius, does several layers of like his chronostasis magic all around him. And, just like traps Conrad within these layers, and ends up, locking him away. And we don't see it too much here, but, it's, Julius does seem slightly reluctant, like he doesn't want to do this because he knows what Conrad is really like, or what he can be like. And the thing that we get from Conrad is that his motivation behind this, or at least the motivation that we're given throughout a good portion of the movie, is that he wants to make the world better. He wants to rebuild the Clover Kingdom and make it that it's a world where everybody can be respected, regardless of, their status or their magical ability and everything like that. And one of the last things that he says when he's being sealed away is that he shouts out, my magic is never giving up, which of course, as people who have seen the series, we all know that that is what Asta says all the time, that his magic is never giving up. And they're able to lock him away. And then 10 years later, on the anniversary of that, they're having this big celebration, this big, festival, and there's going to be this big tournament where, they're going to have the different magic knights all fight against each other to try to figure out who's the strongest and everything. And of course, well, they have Mimosa and Klaus as like the MCs for the event, which I'm like, I don't know where they're doing this, but like we see like the rest of the Black Clover, the Black Bulls there and everything, and a bunch of the different Magic Knights captains are there, and everybody's in the stands watching, and they also cut around to like using Marx's magic to project the images of what's going on all around the Clover Kingdom. So we see the people in Hajj with, Sister Lily and all the orphans and, the father there. And then we see the people that are at the orphanage where Marie is with the nun and the other family and the other friends there and everything. And then we also see the refugees from the Diamond Kingdom that are there as well. And we cut around the kingdom multiple times throughout the course of the story to see other people that we've, seen throughout the course of the series, and how they're being affected by the events that are going on. Similar to kind of what we saw with Film Red, with One Piece, where we saw all of these different, people around the world watching the concert that YouTube was putting on. So it's a similar concept, which I'm fine, because this is their version of mass media is, having Marx or someone use their power to project this information around the country. Makes perfect sense. And the first two up are of course, because it's they're well, he's everybody's favorite pretty boy, and he even has a fan club there that are cheering him on and everything. And this is, he's the vice captain of the Golden Dawn and everything. And then we have this masked one come in. It's Asta. This masked, this masked opponent come in, and it's Asta. And as the audience, we're yeah, that's Asta. We all know this. It's not a surprise. And Asta and are going to be the first match, and they're both getting ready to fight. And, lets out one of his wind magics, and Asta blocks it and everything. And, and then that's when kind of all hell breaks loose, because Conrad, along with these other, 3 wizard kings have, they've appeared, and Jester makes this giant barrier form around the stadium and trapping everybody inside of it. And then Conrad unleashes the sword's power and starts, all these different beams of light start appearing all around the stadium, and people kind of start collapsing or fainting, including Julius, who was in the crowd, as his, small Wizard King form in disguise. And Conrad kind of, confronts Julius, and he's just like, you have lost a lot of your magic, apparently, within the last 10 years. And we find out that the reason that Conrad was able to escape the chronostasis that he was in was because of when Julius was stabbed by, I think it was stabbed by Patri, because he was the one that was connected to Captain Vengeance, that was, the mastermind behind the, Midnight Sun, that when he was stabbed and, for all intents and purposes, killed or nearly killed, during that moment, that his power lapsed enough that Conrad was able to escape. And then Conrad has then spent the next however many months, year-ish, whatever, that everything's been going on, gathering up what he needs. He's, gone and awakened these three previous Wizard Kings. He states that between all of the powers that he has from the other grimoires that he's copied, along with the power within the wizard, the Imperial Blade, he was able to then resurrect these three Wizard Kings. He also states that, or it's also stated somewhere within this, that these are three previous Wizard Kings who were all deposed, had their titles removed from them because of the fact that they had done crimes against the kingdom. Given what we're going to find out later about Conrad, I don't think that's 100% true. Jester, I can buy it. Princia and Edward are a little bit more on the iffy side in certain things, given what we see about like their backstories, the little glimpses we get. But we'll have to see. Again, I'm going to do a separate video where I talk much more about like the Wizard Kings, these 4 Wizard Kings, and a little bit more about their past that we are given. So big battle ensues. A bunch of the Royal Knights, or a bunch of the Magic Knights, are focusing on getting everybody out of the building, out of the stadium as quickly as possible. Princia unleashes a bunch of her Legion magic all over the stadium, and Asta starts fighting them to protect people, as do the rest of a bunch of the other Magic Knights that are there. Starts fighting as well. Julius, or Marx, tries to help Julius, and then he gets his grimoire. I don't know if it's copied or if it's just like he gets his grimoire like Conrad seems to do something where he like reads something about Marx and then he just knocks Marx out and defeats him. But then we have it that a bunch of the Black Bulls are fighting as well. Noelle's fighting alongside Asta and everything, and she's explaining that everybody here had a little bit of their magic power drained and everything. And, it seems to be because of these guys that showed up here. And they're not quite able to tell who everybody is yet. But that these are like former Wizard Kings and everything like that, which, admittedly, they're not going to expect. Yes, they just dealt with a whole group of people that were resurrected, but that was like souls that were resurrected and put into the bodies, or reincarnated in the bodies of, these different, citizens of the Clover Kingdom. Whereas when it comes to this case, it's like these are former Wizard Kings who, they're fully brought back, but they're brought back in connection to the sword. So basically, if you destroy the sword, then they will go away because their magic power goes away because the source of it is taken from them. Again, very similar to a Horcrux. And what ends up happening is, Asta's trying to fight, Noelle's helping, and then we have, Yami shows up, and, he gets Julius away from Conrad, and, we see Frogolion and, Nozel show up, and they're running around trying to help. We see Dorothy and Rill show up within this time frame, and they're helping as much as they can. In regards to fighting against the Wizard Kings and Conrad and everything. And Conrad is like taunting Julius, like, this is what you have for your Magic Knights now. This is the best that you can offer a peasant boy with no magic. And, because like, the other three Wizard Kings are causing a whole bunch of chaos within the, building in the Colosseum, as well as, a bunch of the other Magic Knights are working on getting all of the civilians out. And what Conrad ends up doing is, he's like taunting Julius, and as I said, Yami shows up and gets Julius away from him, and then Julius and Yami end up sending Asta, Noel, and Finral off to go and get this weapon that's waiting for them in this secret research facility area, because of course Julius has a secret research facility area, which is perfectly reasonable. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. It sends them off there. And what ends up happening is, they send them off, and then, a bunch of the rest of the captains are trying to deal with the Wizard Kings. And, we kind of cut away from that battle at one point in time where we see, Asta, Noel, and Finral show up at this, it's branch 0 of this, research facility. And Finral seems to have been here before. Julia stated that they were working with Nero in order to try to create something that could help against the Imperial Sword. And that's what this research facility is doing, or part of it. They get there and they meet this first woman who I cannot remember what her name is, but she seems nice. I don't remember her name. I'm sorry. They meet this woman who's like the director of the branch, and then Nero, who seems to have been working there as well, leads them down through the bowels of this building, down like the setup in Pokemon where you have like the giant platform that you like stand on the platform and then it just lowers and everything like that, but just goes down really, really far, and then through another door that's like sealed with Nero's magic, and then down even further. I'm like, how freaking far down is this? It's also stated that very few people know about this branch, know about this location, let alone how to get inside of it. So we have that. And, they state that Sally, as in Sally from the Midnight Sun, the she's working there as well. And that Nero has been working alongside her, along with a few other people, in order to be able to create something. She states that it is supposed to be like a way of containing the Imperial Sword's magic, like a sheath. She also states that she's been updated on what's going on, and she knows that this is Conrad Leto, and Finral recognizes the name. And, Finral comes from a rather well-to-do family. Noel, of course, comes from a royal family as well. Austin, not so much, so it wouldn't be surprising why he doesn't recognize the name. But, the other two do. And Finral's like, wait, wasn't he the guy that got sick and died a while ago? And stuff. And Nero's like, yeah, no, that's not what happened. And it's basically, she explains it yeah, no, that's not what happened. He rebelled against the kingdom, and he had to be locked away by Julius and some others, and, locked away in chronostasis to prevent him from continuing on his war path. And now he's broken out. And to prevent the people from uprising or becoming worried, they just stated that, Conrad got sick and, passed away. So that way it could be an easy transition into Julius being the next Wizard King without causing a bunch of fear among the people. Fair enough. Fair enough. And so what we end up seeing is, of course, they get down into the facility, and Conrad is, of course, already there. And he's already arrived there. Prior to this with Conrad, we have it that he had been, still fighting against a bunch of the others, at the stadium, and he activates part of the stadium's power, which is he reveals that 10 years ago he had actually converted it, and he has now turned it into this flying, stadium, and he has Jester have this, locks, all these barriers around it so people can't get inside of it, or it's much harder for people to get inside of. And then he has then sent out the other three Wizard Kings in order to kind of, basically just, take control of the Clover Kingdom, to repress the people, to trap them away, and then to use the sword's power to be able to drain away their magic, so that way it will power the sword, and then he can use the sword for his own means of what he wants to do to destroy the kingdom. Basically wrench the Clover Kingdom out from its roots, and then just burn it to ash and destroy the entire continent type of thing. And I'm like, you might want to talk to the Heart, Spade, and Diamond Kingdoms and see what their opinions are on this matter, because I don't think they're gonna like this. Um, um, so we have that. So Conrad has this giant flying stadium setup, which I'm like, okay, you get points for style there, dude. Also, all four of these guys look awesome in regards to their character designs, if I didn't mention that before. But he also, they're also trying to find the best mana veins for their target. Because like they talk about like the mana veins that run through the country and that coalesce in different areas, and it's a reference to like ley lines that we have here, supposed ley lines that are with throughout the country or throughout the world and stuff like that. It's a reference to those things, and there are like magical sites in our world that kind of like correspond with the ley lines, like Stonehenge and different things like that. So there's that. And, Asta and the rest of the group that are at the Zero Branch, they end up having to then fight against Conrad while he is there. And they end up fighting against him. He's already he destroys the sheath thing, so that's not even worth doing anything with. He's knocked out Sally, and he basically just one-shots to a degree Finral, and Asta pins Asta to the ground, and has Noelle not dead to rights, but he has her kind of knocked away and everything. And he shows them that he was able to defeat the rest of their captains that were there. And of course Noelle is worried about her brother, and the others are worried about Captain Yami and everything. And Conrad, he clocks, oh yeah, you're Noelle Silva. He also mentions that he has one of his powers is he kind of has memory magic where he can read other people's memories. And so that's how he knew about this facility and how he knows who all of these people are. So it's a quick way of having it be so they don't have to explain who they are to Conrad. But he, oh, you're Nozelle's sister. The prodigy of Asier Silva. So he was familiar with Asier. Well, I mean, 10 years ago, when he would have been Wizard King, she would have already been dead, but we don't know how long he was Wizard King for before everything happened. And even then, he would have had to have been a Magic Knight captain for a while as well before he would have been given the position of Wizard King. So he probably knew who Asier was at that point in time. And what ends up happening, knew about her and everything, considering the fact that she was the captain of the Silver Eagles for a good chunk of time. And so he recognizes her. Noelle gets angry, and she attacks him with her, Sea Dragon's roar. And then he just, uses his power to, have this tree thing, vines thing come out and, pin her to the wall. And then he takes one of his keys and her grimoire, and he seems to unlock her grimoire and copy all of that power, all of her spells. And then it just turns her grimoire completely white, blank to a degree, like stone, so she can't do anything with it. And it drains away all of her magical power. And so then he's able to use her power. And then he ends up, fighting Asta. So we have this fight between the two of them. That results in Asta kind of getting his butt kicked, but he lands some good blows on Conrad, which is good. But Asta just, Conrad explains that his intention is to, from all the different powers and everything like that, that he's borrowed, stolen, copied from other wizards and everything like that, along with elemental magic, his plan is to use all of those and combine them all together. And he just uses all of these different powers that he has in order to just, defeat Asta. And Asta gets very badly injured, and shows up during this time frame, and he is able to, I think he lands a couple of blows on Conrad, but nothing too over the top. And Sally, Nero, and the one lady that was the branch director or whatever actually end up using their powers together in order to try to seal Conrad away, and they use that as distraction in order to, because Nero has sealing magic. It doesn't work. It only lasts for a very short amount of time given the amount of power he has. but they use that time frame as a time to escape with Yuno's help. And they escape to this to the Golden Dawn's like safe house area that they're building, and they're all getting medical treatment. Mimosa and Klaus, I think, were both able to escape, so Mimosa is using her healing magic to heal everybody. We have this nice little moment between Mimosa and Noelle, which I like. And then we have, Asta is, of course, he's, to the point where he's like, okay, we need to go and fight. We need to go and stand up to him. And Asta, he's still recovering. Conrad kind of mentioned that they have until dawn to, because at dawn is when they're going to enact their plan. So they have until dawn to, get everything ready and for the, for the Magic Knights to fight back. And Asta, Asta is very motivated within this time frame. And actually, Seki, who, Seki just did some awesome stuff in the manga, so Seki gets points for that. But I also don't blame him for the fact that he's, pointing out the fact of, like, we can't win against them. We don't have the power to win against them. What do you expect us to do? There are 4 previous Wizard Kings. They just beat a bunch of our captains. And, and Asta does not deny that. Asta, does this big rousing speech and everything to the, to the mismatched sets of the other squads that are still there within, that have managed to escape and survive what the Wizard Kings were doing. And, Asta gives this, rousing speech and everything. And, he's got and Mimosa and Nero behind him, and Noelle sitting on her, recovery bed while he's talking, and she's listening to it and, does his big speech and everything. And then she stands up and, she puts her cloak back on and, fixes her hair, and she's all ready. And we have this great moment where all of the different knights, salute Asta and everything, which is great. Because like he proved that he earned their respect in that regard. And, he doesn't, he's like, if any of you do want to run away, I'm not going to make you fight with me. I'm not going to make you fight alongside me. If you want to go with Seki and try to find a place to stay that's safe, then so be it. I'm not going to, not going to blame you for that or anything like that. And then Seki starts trying to escape, and then the front door just kind of blows up. And in walks Marileona. And along with Captain Vengeance, Captain Jack, and Captain Charlotte, they all show up because they were all off on different. Captain Jack and Vengeance were off on a joint mission against something, and then Charlotte was somewhere else, and then of course Marileona was just off training at a volcano because she does. And Marileona was off training in a volcano because what else is she gonna do? And, they're impressed by Asta's, fighting spirit and everything. And they start developing this plan where they're like, okay, here's what we're going to need to do. And actually, the rest of the Black Bulls show up as well. And they, like Noelle, runs over and she hugs Vanessa and everything. And like, we see the rest of them. The only ones that aren't there are Gordon and Henry, who are at the base currently, but they're trapped there because of the barrier magic. So they're like, the other captains are like, okay, they have like this big round table where they have the other 3 captains, Marileona, and then Asta, Yuna, Noelle, and the rest of them. And, a bunch of the other ones there. And they're all discussing stuff. And like Charmy is there, and Charmy's running around like giving everybody food to help, restore their magic and everything. So she's giving everybody food to help with that. She also just like slams a cake into like Asta's face, which is funny. But she's like running around giving food to everyone to get them all back up to, snuff and everything. And they figured out that, okay, so what we're going to do is first we're going to go to the Black Bull's base, and we're going to, free it, get Henry and Gordon, and then use the Black Bull's base. Because of Henry's power, he can make it that the Black Bull's base can fly. That is a movable fortress, which they need to fight against the frickin' flying fortress. That the Wizard Kings have. So they need to go after that. And so that's their first plan of attack. And then they need to work on getting inside of where the rest of the Wizard Kings are, so that way they can fight against them. Their main plan of action is to send Asta against Conrad, because if Asta can get to Conrad and at the very least hit his sword, hit one of Asta's anti-magic swords against the Imperial Blade, then that should be enough to then, release the power and make it that the other Wizard Kings shouldn't be able to fight back as easily, because they don't have this unlimited power source of the magic that has been drawn into them from the citizens of the Clover Kingdom, which is also a good idea. We have this moment with Noelle where she's like, okay, well, I can't use the spells within my grimoire, but I can still summon and control water to a degree. So we see her working with that. So she's ready to keep going on that front, which again just kind of shows how far Noelle has come throughout the course of her, journey in of itself, from the beginning of the series up until now. And what ends up happening is, of course, they all send out. They get to the Black Bull's hideout. They stop it. Gordon and Henry are both there. Gordon is like sitting in the corner, like mumbling about what's going on because he's Gordon. And then, he's all like up and ready to fight when the others show up. And, Henry, a bunch of the other Magic Knights walk in. Henry just starts, pulling energy from them, and Charmy's like making them stuff their faces more and everything. And Gordon, uses that to like power up, the Black Bull's base and everything. He's like, I've never felt so much power. And, uses that to power up the base and make it fly. And then via other things, we have these moments where, we get this great combo attack because Magna, Luck, and Gordon all release different attacks through some of these different like barrel chambers that Henry has like set up in the house in the inside of their Flying Bull fortress, and releases them out. And then Gauche, using his mirror powers, is able to then reflect that and focus it in and make it stronger against the Wizard King that they're fighting, because they have to fight against Jester to try to get through his barrier to get to where the other Wizard Kings are. So they're sending that through. So we get a great combo attack there. And then, of course, we also have it that Charlotte, Vengeance, and Jack end up having to fight against a bunch of the different Legion magic that was sent by Princia. So they're fighting against a bunch of that at one point in time. And then I think they show up again later on, possibly, and help with some of that stuff. And one of the other things that happen is, of course, Asta has to use his power, his anti-magic blade, in order to try to get through the barrier. They succeed. He ends up having to have Yuno there, kind of acting as a bit of like a backup to like guard him, because Asta has to focus on getting through the barrier. And then Asta and Yuno both see Conrad on top of the skull, the giant demon skull that was where the Wizard King stood for so long. And that's where like all of the different magic, the monolines, come together. So Asta heads down there to fight him. And then we have 3 other battles happening simultaneously during this time frame. And what ends up happening is, so we have these 3 different battle setups. So the first one that we have set up, and I'm going to go through all of these separately in a moment, but the 3 setups that we have are 4 setups. So Asta is heading off to go and fight Conrad. That's going to be a one-on-one battle. Then we have Marileona goes off to go and fight against Princia. Marileona also has this like great speech that she gives. It's like, you will do this, you will fight, and if you fail and if you die, I will find you and I will kill you again. And I'm like, great motivational speech there, Marileona. Thank you. That was wonderful. So we have that moment, which is just funny. So she goes off to fight Princia. And Yuno, along with, because he frees Yami, Fragolion, and Nozel from where they're being kept within the fortress by Jester. He frees them, and then those 4 end up fighting against Jester during that time frame. And then the last battle setup is Noelle and the rest of the Black Bulls fighting against Edward. So there's that battle going on there. So we have these like 4 different battles all happening at the same time. So basically I'm going to go through like each one separately. So the first one that we kind of have is Marileona and Princia, their fight. So Marileona apparently has an idea of who Princia is because Frogolion mentioned that there was something in one of their grandfather's journals about Princia, about the fact of her legion magic and how strong it was, and how Marileona had actually been kind of fascinated with it when they were children. So Marileona goes and fights Princia. And we get this great battle, this giant, great, girl fight. And Marileona kind of loses the first match because she's fighting against like the Legion soldiers and everything like that. And Princia seems to be able to do different moves that are very similar to like chess moves, like castling and different things like that, where she like switches herself with her different pieces. And sends herself around the playing field, and not getting hit by Marileona. Then she actually ends up stabbing Marileona. And of course, that's not going to be enough to take down Marileona. God, no. This woman bathes in volcanoes. What are you expecting? And she like melts Princia's sword and pulls it out of her. And Princia becomes exceedingly impressed with this because Marileona actually made her use her fist. And Marileona and Princia end up actually getting into an actual fist fight. And so they're going back and forth in that vein. And then Princia is impressed with the fact that Marileona seems to have gotten even stronger during part of this fight. And at one point in time, Princia actually ends up summoning up this really good suit of armor that like it reminds me a little bit of like Urza from Fairy Tail, with like Urza's equip armor and everything like that. It reminds me a little bit of that. Of course, Princia is on a much more serious side than Urza than Urza is for the most part. But, Princia, we get some slight hints of flashback during this fight. Not too much. Mostly it's like stuff to do with, she mentions the fact that, maybe if she had found an opponent like Marileona when she had been the Wizard King, then maybe she wouldn't have been so lonely. And again, separate video where I talk more about the Wizard King's past, those different pasts, because they all seem kind of interesting. Also, it gives a little bit more depth to the characters and stuff. And Marileona actually ends up using her, like, that magma fire form or whatever that she has, that she goes into, that I know later on she ends up using during some of the fights with, like, the Spade Kingdom, and I think a form that she's, like, very similar form that she's currently in, like, the current arc in the manga, fighting against, Lucius, or whatever pawn of Lucius she's fighting against at that point in time. So she goes into that form, and she's just, her and Princia are just trading blows back and forth and everything like that. It's like, I can do this all day. Marileona, go make fun, go be friends with Captain America. We got some similar things in common, or it's just like, you may have won this round, but I'll beat you in the next round and everything like that. Trading powerful spells back and forth with each other and powerful blows back and forth, and everything. So that kind of goes on in their fight. The second set that is going on is, as I said, the Black Bulls against Edward. And he actually kind of gives them a chance to run because he kind of sees that they're not bad. He doesn't see them as arrogant nobles and everything like that, because again, his issues are more against like arrogant nobles and royals who do not care about like the lower class. And he sees that a lot of these are probably from the lower class, which we as the audience know a lot of them are, but we also know that Noelle and Finral and Gauche all come from, Noelle comes from royalty, but Gauche and, Gordon come from, Gordon, not really Gordon, but Gauche and, Finral come from pretty well-to-do families as well. Even though they're, ostracized from them to a degree, or disgraced in Gauche's case. So we kind of see that, and, he gives them a chance to run. They don't run, obviously. Zora, like, keeps taunting him throughout the course of this entire fight, so it's just kind of funny in that regard. And what ends up happening is, of course, they're fighting against him. He ends up doing this giant, like, his monozone is just like freezing down the entire battlefield, so that way they can barely move. Like, their feet are and limbs are like frozen to the ice, to the ground and everything. And like at one point in time during the battle, Gray had ended up like she had like tried to change the ground into, I think, magma, because she shifts power around and changes it. And I think she tried to change the ground into magma, and then Edward just like straight up freezes it. And then like she gets saved just by Ghost, which is adorable because I do like the two of them together. So we have that, and even at one point in time, as I said, Edward gives them the chance to flee, to give up and run away, and he would not chase after them. And they're like, yeah, no, even if you give us the chance to run, we're not going to. We are the Black Bulls. We will fight. And we have like this great pan shot of like all of them together, ready to fight and ready to keep going against him, regardless of what it's going to cost, even if it's to the death and everything. So we have that moment there. So we have that fight. And then we have it that during this time frame, Noelle, gives kind of a very good speech against Edward when they're all kind of frozen in place and such. And, he's about ready to wipe out the squad. And because of what's going on with the battle with Asta and Conrad at this point in time, Noelle's magic gets freed and she gets her power back. And she is able to then turn into her Valkyrie dress form. And she uses that along with having Ghosh uses his mirror magic to create all the different clones of her. So we have that going on. So we have like all of these different Noelles, which I missed the first time I watched the movie. And then I noticed it later on when, Ghosh cloned her. Okay, that's what was going on. That's the tiny bit that I missed. So Ghosh clones her. And so it's all of these different Noelles fighting against, this giant freaking ice monster thing that Edward has created that is very powerful on its own. And so Noelle is using her power against that regard, against that thing. It's like an ice wedge martyr type of giant freaking beast thing that she's fighting against. And Gray at one point changes all of the ice back into water, so then that's power that then Noelle can use. And, Noelle has this bit of a flashback where she's talking about, I was ostracized within my own family and everything like that, what we know about Noelle's past and everything. And she's like, and I'm, and I finally found a place where I belong in regards to, the Black Bulls and Asta with them. So we have that nice, reference there, that nice memory. And, so she's going up, she's doing that and drawing on that as her power to fight against Edward. And again, Edward is, it's like he's similar to Conrad, where he doesn't like the fact that like the lower classes, like the poor, are as oppressed as they are within the Clover Kingdom. So he doesn't like that, just the way that like Conrad doesn't. So there's, there is this, again, he's not entirely bad. Princio was lonely. Jester just seems insane, in my opinion. Edward wanted to make things better. Conrad wanted to make things better. And to a degree, a lot of them were probably all betrayed by the royals and nobles of their time. And such. And we find that that's something that happened with Conrad as well, that he was betrayed by them. And that's one of the reasons why he wanted to, destroy the hierarchy of the Clover Kingdom. And one of the things is, Noelle uses up her power and she is able to destroy, the ice beast thing that, that Edward had created. And she has him, dead to rights type of a thing, her, spear pointed directly at him and she could end him. And again, this lines up with when like Princia has been knocked down by Mira for the last time. And then we get this moment where, obviously, obviously Asta is going to defeat Conrad. That's going to happen. And they're all going to get their magic, taken away from them. And, so Princia had said, during the final ends of each of the battles, Princia has said goodbye to Mira and everything. Maybe if I had failed you, I wouldn't have been so lonely. Thank you for the fight. Maybe someday we can go some more rounds, that type of a thing. And then Edward, to Noelle, he actually asks her name, and she says, I am Noelle Silva. And he says, Ah, a royal. You're a good girl, Noelle. With someone like you, with a royal like you, maybe things can get better. And he kind of reached his hand out to try to try to thank her. I mean, like, she had kind of offered her hand to him as well, and he kind of collapses, and she kind of like helps comfort him a little bit, as he's disappearing, and Princia disappears, and then we get into the big fight with against Jester. So uses his power to actually end up freeing what Jester thinks are like fruitless attempts to attack him, are actually designed to free the other captains, Yami and Nozel and Forgolion specifically, to free them, so that way they can then help fight against Jester, which results in several times where we get these great different combinations of attacks between Yami and the others. And Yami, of course, keeps, Yami keeps going on the fact of, like, he, like, kind of, like, knocks, for the fact of, like, you're supposed to be gentle with the damsel in distress. I'm a Virgo, and, just, like, being funny because he's Yami and everything like that. And then, of course, Yami makes jokes with everybody else and makes jokes with Jester and everything, because, that's just the way that Yami works. And, Yuno is using up, a ton of his power. And the thing is that all of the captains have actually spent a good chunk of the day, the night, having their power drained from them, to be used in the ritual, including Julius. Julius has also had his power drained from him. We also have this moment earlier where Julius and Conrad are talking, and Conrad is, I will make it that the last things that, you see before you die are these pitiful magic knights that you have, cultivated over the last 10 years, and I will make you watch them die before I finally kill you as well. As a form of revenge against Julius for, locking Conrad away. And so we have that. So, we have this big battle with, Forgolion, Nozel, and Yami all acting as, like, backup / support for, like, because Yuno's the only one that's actually kind of at full health at this point in time. And, of course, we get some great moves from and everything like that, where he's, using his, divine dive form, whatever it is, where he's merged with, the wind spirit and everything with Nell, is that her name? I don't remember. Where they're merged together and everything, and, fighting against Jester, who just seems to be having the time of his life, which is very annoying. And then, he just kind of goes off on Crazy Town loop at some point in time, and causes a bunch of, big more stuff of, battle there. And one of the things that finally ends him is, Yami, Nozel, and Forgolion all do this, like, big combo attack with, like, Yami's sword as the base, and then I think Nozel coated it with, like, his power to add stuff, and then Forgolion added his fire to it and made it, even stronger in that regard for this combo attack between the three of them. And Yami uses that for, like, one slash, and then uses his power to then do one of his, like, wind blade slashes. And those cause a huge amount of damage to Jester. And then, of course, again, this lands when, certain stuff is happening with the fight between Asta and Conrad, and Jester ends up, losing his power. And they all start, the three former Wizard Kings start fading. Then we get into the battle between Asta and Conrad. And yes, I know this video is at an hour long already. Sorry. We have the fight between Asta and Conrad, which is taking place, parts of it's taking place on top of the skull, that has, just outside the village of Hajj and everything like that, where, Asta and grew up, so, they're calling that into play. Conrad has plunged the sword into the vein, so it's starting to cause destruction to start happening and everything around the village. Conrad has explained somewhere in this that, yes, he's going to destroy the kingdom, but he's going to use the sword to preserve the souls of all of those that were in the kingdom, and then bring them back inside of a better land. And of course, we get this great big fight between Asta and Conrad, where, Asta's in his, devil form, and where Conrad is in like this kind of like defined god form, where he's got like all of the different, he's combined all of his powers together and everything like that. And, he's got like green and red and blue and yellow light and markings and whatever coming off of him, and he looks cool. Over the top, looks cool. Yeah, anime villain. Villain's kind of a strong word, but anime antagonist in this regard. So we have that all going on, and Asta is trying to fight against him, and trying to attack him with the anti-magic sword to try to get to, the Wizard King sword, and try to free Noelle's power and everything like that. And so we have this back and forth going on with them. Trading blows back and forth. Asta, saying that never giving up is my my magic is never giving up and everything like that. And, Conrad and Asta, of course, because Asta is very good when it comes to reading people's ki, during the fight, he kind of starts to understand Conrad a little more. It doesn't mean he's going to, like, stop and side with Conrad. Conrad even, because of Asta's determination, he's like, join my side and I'll make you my successor and you can become the next Wizard King and everything. And Asta's like, becoming the Wizard King isn't just when someone gives you, it's something you have to earn and everything like that. So he's having, that big fight there. And, going up against Conrad, and eventually he does manage to land a blow on the anti-magics on the sword, on the Imperial sword, which A, releases Noelle's power, so she's able to then have her power back. B, just a bit later, it results in the rest of the Wizard Kings losing their connection to the power anymore, so they can't be sustained in the real, sustained in the world of the living anymore. So they are then start, disappearing and everything, which then ties into what's going on at the end of their battles. And so then Asta is still having to deal with Conrad. Conrad has lost a bunch of his magic now at this point in time, and he activates this one final spell that is a forbidden spell. And it basically looks like it's a forbidden spell because the cost of it is using his own life. If he sacrifices his own life to use the spell, then, it's like this last-ditch effort type of a thing. And basically makes this giant magical seal appear, and it looks like it's going to basically drop a meteor. Which I'm like, okay, now Asta has to fight a meteor. Great. And Julia shows up with help from Yami. Julia shows up and gives Asta the Imperial sword and says, use this and use it to destroy that thing and, finish off Conrad. And we have this moment that is like a callback to like the beginning of the series where we have like the explanation of the clovers, where it's, within the 3-leaf clover, each leaf contains faith, hope, and love. Within the 4th is luck, and within the 5th is the devil. And we have this great thing where we show like, a bunch of the different, members of the Magic Knights, with like the clover that represents them. And of course, 4 being, representing Yuno. And then of course, 5 is of course going into Asta. And then we see, Lich appear, and he gives Asta a power up to be able to fight, and Asta is using the Imperial sword in one hand and his main anti-magic sword in the other, and powers them both up, and he is able to slice apart the meteor. And one of the things that happened during the battle with Conrad is that Conrad has this locket that he keeps with him, that he always has. And the locket ends up flying off and opening, and we see a picture of a woman in the locket, and that shifts from a picture of her to a picture of Asta with the black bulls. And, even when Conrad is defeated, he's like, I was defeated, but why do I feel so at ease? And like his last image is, he's starting to fade, and, his last image is, seeing Asta there. And he's like, become the Wizard King. It's like this is like inner monologue stuff because I don't think he's actually talking. And he's like, become the Wizard King and make the world better, because we have this big argument between him and Asta where he's like, the previous Wizard King wasn't able to, protect everybody. And Asta's like, well, that's not true. He spent, he sacrificed himself to protect the kingdom 500 years ago. And then, he waited for the next, 500 some years until he was needed again so he could then defeat, fight against the elves and the devil and everything. And, so Asta's explaining that to him, and, Asta had gotten stabbed by Conrad at one point in time during the fight. And, so Asta got damaged in that regard. But he's also pointing out the fact that Julius had sacrificed his own life in order to protect the people of the Clover Kingdom as well from everything that happened with the Eye of the Midnight Sun. So, yes, not every Wizard King has probably always been the best, but Julius has been doing everything he can to try to protect people. And yes, we know, given certain things that have been revealed much more recently in the manga in regards to Julius and stuff with the Spade Kingdom and everything along those lines, that's a little bit left up for iffy debate there, given certain circumstances, but Julius is a good Wizard King. And so, Asta is, trying to point that out to Conrad. And of course, as I said, Asta is able to defeat Conrad and slice up the meteor and take care of that. And then Conrad fades, and as he's fading, he sees like these three, star constellation versions of the other three Wizard Kings, indicating, that they're all, going back to being in the sword, back to their eternal rest, and that he's joining them and stuff. And then we cut to, it's like at dawn, and we have Julius talking to, Noelle and the others. One of the things that actually happened that I kind of slightly skipped over that I am going to go back to at the moment before I go into that bit. During the final battle, or the last bit where like Asta has the Imperial sword, all of like these portals open up like from Finral's magic, and out comes pouring all of this other magic, and it's from the rest of the Magic Knights, the captains and the lower ranks and everything like that, sending their power through to send into Asta send into the sword for Asta to be able to use. And so Asta is then able to use that to power himself up, and then use that to attack Conrad and destroy the meteor and everything. So we have that. We also see Noct sending in some of his own power at that point in time. And like his little demon, the little devil that he has on his shoulder all the time that I cannot remember its name, is like, Master Noct, don't do that. You're going to end up falling asleep. So Noct does appear in the movie very briefly. So we have that. And then, then we cut to, the end of it is, Asta and a bunch of the others and Julius are like on top of the skull and talking while he's getting healed by Mimosa. And Julius is explaining that, Conrad had been betrayed by the royals and nobles. He was framed, and his wife and his squad were slaughtered, and that's what sent him over the edge. That's what made him rebel in the first place. And he says that each of the Wizard Kings had, put a piece of their magic within the sword in case something was ever needed. And that the sword has been, all of them watched the events that transpired, and they allowed Asta to be able to use parts of their magic. So we have that. So, it's like we cut to, everybody's being, the stuff is being rebuilt, everybody's fine and everything. Everybody's been freed. And then we have the end credits, and then after the end credits, there's one more little scene where we have Asta lying on the grass outside of Hodge Village, seeing that stuff's being rebuilt there, and Juno comes over, and, comes over and starts teasing him, and then, like, they end up going into a fight. Both of them, again, proclaiming that they will become the Wizard King. Because, of course, it's like, well, we can't have them have a full-on fight yet. That we can't do that yet. That has to be saved for the end of the series. So we have like fun little thing there. I really enjoyed the movie. I thought that it was there's a lot of fight battling in it. Yeah, I know. But there's also character development that we see in regards to seeing, how far Noelle has come, and even Asta in regards to getting more confident in himself, and, different things along those lines. So we get some other, setups there. The animation in it looked amazing. I thought it looked so good. Not really anything else that I can think of in that regard. They had the voice cast from the series, obviously. Um, the only one that I can think of out of the different Wizard Kings that actually had any form of like, oh, I know exactly who that person is when I saw the name, was the one that voices Edward, is Steve Bloom, who has voiced Spike Spiegel, of course, from Cowboy Bebop. He's also voiced a lot of different Digimon throughout Digimon in regards to stuff in Digimon Adventures 2.0. He voices Gilmon and Gilmon's lines in Digimon Tamers, which of course I'm going through right now. He's also been like Wolverine and some other stuff as well, for like American cartoons. And he's been in so many different things, as so many different strong men or bad men or whatever. So that's like, I think the only one that I actually recognized right off the bat when I saw the name, but thought I'd point that out. So that's what I have for this. The video ended up being, well, about as long as I expected it to be. Again, I liked the movie. I'll do another video later on where I talk about the different Wizard Kings, a little bit more about their specific pasts that are touched upon in the movie, but not really elaborated upon, that I think was probably explained in like additional material. That would have been nice to have seen a little bit of in the movie, just to get a little bit more of the backstory for them, to make you have a little bit more sympathy for them, or why they're doing what they're doing. But again, I'll talk about those in a different video. So that's what I have. I thank you for watching, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye!